Okay, so just very, very quickly, I just want to start off with some headlines. Some of these might be familiar to you, some of them might not be, but they're really, really still pertinent today. That in our industry, 96% of the data that gets generated in infrastructure projects goes unused, 90% unstructured. Rather unsurprisingly then, that 23% of people's time, according to McKinsey, is spent searching for, gathering accurate and trusted information to help them make informed decisions. But what's more problematic, and this is something that has been a recurring theme throughout the sessions that I've attended this morning, is one about fragmentation, data silos, that over 1 in 4 applications do not have the capability to be able to integrate into other operating systems. Now, when we talk about BIM, we mean information, okay? That's information in the form of data. BIM is about managing data more effectively. We see lots and lots of vendor information around the visualization or the view of life. And the thing that often gets missed is data. And without this, all the fancy graphics mean nothing, frankly. It's rubbish. Okay, so it's really, really important to remember that we're talking about data here when we're talking about BIM. But behind the BIM story is a commercial one. And this is one about cost. And credit to Mark Bew, actually, for this slide. Now, these bubbles represent cost. And most of our time, for everybody in the room, I assume, is spent on the left-hand side talking about the capital delivery of projects. We get all the attention, but none of the impact. I mean, in terms of spending the money, that is. But as you go through to operations, that 80-20 rule applies, where 20% of the overall capital expenditure is spent on the design and the construction, and 80% is spent through the operation. However, 300% is expended in the operational, functional delivery of the services that asset has to deliver. We look a bit further to the right, the numbers get a bit scary. Our bills, taxes of lost opportunity, the healthcare, social housing, this is where the real money goes. This is the social impact of the infrastructure and the buildings for which that we design and build and operate. We deliver a bad hospital, the number grows. If we're delivering suboptimal assets, the social bill rises. Now, to draw some conclusion and draw some relativity to this, in the UK, with the NHS, 12% of the NHS's spend is on mental health. A large part of the mental health crisis in the UK is linked to poor social housing and the accommodation for which lower income households are in. So if we can spend more than 2% more on accommodation over here on the left-hand side, we can reduce that far right number by 1%, which will, in short, pay for all the buildings. This is the relationship between what we do on the right is linked to what we do here on the left, and the digital engineering plays a critical part. So if we deliver a better infrastructure and a built environment for our citizens, we'll end up with lower costs and better social outcomes. And this is really the fundamental of what BIM Level 2, and this was the catalyst for it. Now, if you look at high-performing assets, and we look at this data here, this is from a Formula 1 car. It's going around the circuit in Barcelona. And this is probably the highest performing, quickest developing asset in the world. Okay, now with buildings, you can imagine how much data that we're collecting and understanding and how they're performing. And whilst we're starting to see massive growth in IoT and sensory and monitoring data to collect and gather more and more and more, how much do we actually know about this? Nothing, or very little. We know nothing about our built environment. So you can create all these point cloud fly-throughs, and quite frankly, like I say, it's pointless. We need to understand what's in those assets. What's the material makeup? How much carbon are they using? How many people are in them? What's happening to those people? And that's what the social outcomes are all about. So very briefly, I want to showcase the work that's been done at National Highways, which is it's a UK government company which plans, designs, builds, operates England's major road network to the tune of a physical asset portfolio of about £140 billion. Now, National Highways conducted a data valuation exercise, and the findings were that they put a value on their data at £60 billion, which is almost unheard of. Okay, and that really, really got the attention of senior government officials and the leadership team there. The National Highways are part of an alliance. They're made up of engineering and construction partners, all with different ways of working and using different technologies and different processes and different people. all of the similar problems that we know. And we heard earlier again around the 3Ps, the people, product, process, which sit nicely within here around the ways of working, the people and the technology. There's a specific pillar and a focus again has been placed on the data to make sure that the data that they have is defined and trusted machine readable descriptor of an asset, design, project control and construction data, all working in balance to work towards the outcomes. Now, in terms of, and this is a rather crude image. This isn't actually, obviously, an actual image from the National Highways Archives, but they have no formal way of managing their projects and asset data. They had a highly constrained internal document management system, couldn't be accessed by suppliers. So when required, documents and information had to be searched for and often downloaded and mailed outside the system. The deliverable review was via Excel. Approvals were granted by email. Things like it, unless a file was specifically marked as record, it'd automatically be deleted after a 2-year period. But critically, National Highways had an exposure to significant risk when you consider the value that they place on their data. The documents were often managed and kept in supplier systems and therefore were spread across a wide range of systems that were not owned or controlled by National Highways. So they had to get to this, okay, and this is just a quick screenshot of their PIM to AIM CDE. This is provided by BCDE, and it provides the information capture and process and protocol standardization with full auditability, governance and control. Governance and control being two key areas, okay, both within the National Highways organisation and the ability to be able to mandate and control the information from the wider supply chain that's coming into them at such a volume and velocity, okay. This mitigates the risks significantly. Now they've got 17,500 potential combinations, which previously led to inefficient and really difficult record retrieval. They've now got really fast access within seconds to the information and documentation, both to those within the project teams and those as part of the alliance, but crucially also to business stakeholders needing captured information within the correct context across the entire program and portfolio of projects and assets. And this is saving well over 20% of people's time alone, okay? But again, to the point of custodianship of the value asset data, the reduced risk here from the supply chains to take ownership. Now, I do appreciate this is a rather busy slide, but it serves to demonstrate where the different CDEs are used, and every contributor, okay, on the project outside of the owner operator, the client, should have their own system for managing their own data prior to handing over at the milestone which is defined in the contract. And this was, in fact, the original concept around PAS 1192, now ISO 19650, was intended for, but somehow was misinterpreted to projects must use a single CDE. No, they shouldn't. They absolutely shouldn't. A CDE should allow you to sync information en masse, including its metadata, to retain the integrity of that document. Now, smarter CDEs will even carry out validation and metadata translation services, making the entire progress and experience simple and far more efficient, which is happening here with BCDE. Now, as a client, National Highways define in their EIR that the data deliverables must be made every single week on all major programs. Okay, traditional methods of download, upload, QA, same process again once it hits client side, and specifically, around the velocity of the data that's being passed up the stage gate reviews is extremely prone to error. Okay, now in this instance, where we've got tier one, we've got contractor, we've got engineer. Every single one of these parties has their own common data environment, but what they're doing is they're using the BCD sync technology to be able to push that information in at the right delivery milestones directly into National Highway server, which will then trigger their own workflow internally. So it's really automating that whole process around information delivery, which is a huge time saver. Now, the other part that I wanted to discuss, and we would have seen it on the previous slide, is predicated around the business information framework. So we've seen that subcontractor or design principal all the way through to, the main contractor pushing information up on those weekly data deliverable drops up to National Highways, which is then now feeding into what we call the business information framework. And again, we've heard a number of things here, and Menno from Neon mentioned earlier around a digital overlay, and that is in essence exactly what this is. This is a digital overlay, okay? This is their top hat, the system of systems approach. This is one view of the truth, harnessing the best-in-breed technology for the right job, not looking for a one-size-fits-all or one that stretches the furthest, then utilising the CDE technology with some great UI integration config that was provided by Cohesive, okay? This is their digital twin, a breathing set of both project and asset data, which is now accessible to National Highways through one single pane of glass, okay? We hit the top of the hour now. Okay, just very, very briefly, just want to touch on some of the societal outcomes, which is, this is what we're setting out to achieve, okay? National Highways have been able to now demonstrate some significant societal outcomes, and they'll be able to track and report and monitor on the progress and the tracking on these, from more biodiversity units to quieter homes, to more projects for cyclists and walkers and horse riders and so on and so forth. Okay. So just reviewing the slide that we had at the top of the deck, the data is absolutely used. They've got a very well governed and well structured now repository for the data. The time saved, okay, we can find information and data now within seconds, and the whole point around integration, that top hat CDE, which is now surfacing information from over 14, 15 different operating systems to provide that single view into their project data and their asset data in its true context, and in its context is critical.